It's that time of year again where we look forward to next year's game releases, so here are my top 10 picks for the best historical games that are coming out in 2022 and beyond. Some beautiful, some terrifying, and some, well, a little different. So let's dive in. I've divided this video into chapters which you can see below or scroll along on the play bar at the bottom, so if you get bored of me banging on about one particular game, you can skip forward to the next one. Let me know in the comments what you think of my list and if I've missed anything out, and the games that you're looking forward to in 2022 and beyond. And if you do choose to like or subscribe, thanks, that would really help me out. Let's start with Skull and Bones, the multiplayer sailing and naval combat game set during the golden age of piracy. Now, you may have heard that this game had a troubled development, to say the least. Apparently it's been in the works since 2013 as a kind of multiplayer expansion to Assassin's Creed Black Flag, and the game has been totally redeveloped 3 or 4 times since then. But it's been reported that it's entering internal beta testing, which means it could well finally be on the way to release. In the game, you'll work your way up from a wannabe pirate captain with little more than a raft to becoming a pirate king commanding the largest warships of the period. You'll be able to customize the loadout and appearance of your ship from the comfort of your own pirate base and take to the seas to plunder merchants, fight off colonial powers, and even other rival players in either PvP or PvE, solo or co-op play. One of the most interesting features is the ability to team up with other players to take down powerful AI opponents and either share the loot or turn on your former allies and claim it all for yourself. And one thing that caught my eye with this game is the setting. During the golden age of piracy, but rather than being based in the Caribbean like practically every other pirate game I can think of, it's set in the Indian Ocean, where historically, mainly in the 1690s, pirates took a route like this, following the merchant shipping lanes into the Indian Ocean and back out again, often using Madagascar as a stop-off base. And it looks like this whole area will form the game world, which is a novel setting for a pirate game. I can't wait to see what it looks like. All in all, it's looking exciting. Let's hope Ubisoft can finally pull it out of the bag and deliver a winner. Skull and Bones is slated for release between April 2022 and March 2023. Fingers crossed. Yeah, let's be honest, we'll probably have landed on Mars by the time this thing comes out. At number 9, it's The Troop, a platoon-level, turn-based tactics game set during World War II that follows the exploits of the Allied forces fighting across Normandy from the early hours of D-Day onwards. Battles take place on a hex-based map, with each side taking it in turns to maneuver their forces and attack the enemy, using various weapons and abilities depending on the unit they have selected. The victor is decided using a morale system, which drops lower every time a unit is killed or incapacitated, so if you lose enough men, you'll lose the battle. There's a free demo you can try on Steam. This game won't be for everyone, but give it a go if you like these kind of games. I really enjoyed it, and it reminded me of the classic tactical combat series Close Combat, which is not so great to look at, but I think one of the greatest strategy game series ever made. And The Troop looks to be from a similar historical tactical mould. The tank combat in this is particularly good, with damage dependent on where you strike the enemy, and separate action points for gunnery and movement. It's being developed by a tiny indie team of military history fans, and they've even put in a reference to a guy called Digby Tatham Water, a particularly eccentric British army officer from the Second World War, famous for taking a bowler hat and umbrella into battle. Nice. At number 8, it's Hellblade 2: Senua's Saga. So far, we still don't know a huge amount about this game, revealed in 2019, except it will take place in 9th century Iceland and feature the same protagonist as the original. Judging by the reveal trailer, it's going to be even darker this time round, and features some pretty gnarly music, courtesy of experimental folk band Heilung. You gotta love those guys. The first game starred Senua, a Pict warrior. The Picts were inhabitants of the north of England and Scotland up until the early Middle Ages, dealing with mental health issues that she interprets as a curse, travelling through the Norse underworld to rescue the soul of her dead lover. It seems like we can expect the same blend of action-adventure, puzzle-solving and horror elements. Yeah, definitely horror elements. As the original, and more of the intense depictions and exploration of mental health issues that won the first game so much praise. It looks like the developer Ninja Theory is putting a lot of effort into the fine details. Apparently, Melina Jurgens, who plays Senua, has been in combat training for 2 years to get ready for the role, and they're also looking to accurately recreate a swathe of Iceland to serve as the game's world. I can imagine that this game will again use Senua's psychosis as a way of exploring the fantastical world of Norse mythology and grounding it in someone's personal experience and what seems real to them. Hellblade 2, I hope, is coming out in 2022. At number 7, Romans: Age of Caesar. And despite having a pretty generic sounding name and title art for an ancient Rome game, this is offering something I've never quite seen before in a game. It describes itself as a cooperative grand strategy city builder MMO RTS. And that means up to 16 players can work together to build a Roman city from humble beginnings to a bustling metropolis. Each player will have their own suburb of the city to manage, and they'll share a communal city centre. As well as contributing to the needs of the city to expand and develop it, players will need to clear the local area of barbarians, defend their lands, and send out expeditions to scout nearby areas. It's possible to be voted the leader of your city, which gives you additional powers like managing trade with other player-built cities across the wider strategic map, and if you're powerful enough, you can join the Senate and work your way up towards the ultimate goal of becoming emperor. Now, players can work cooperatively to progress, but they'll also be able to double-cross and betray each other, apparently, even kicking fellow players out of their own cities or the Senate. With an online game, I'm hoping this doesn't descend into a backstabbing simulator, although that would be apt for the Roman Empire, seeing as about a third of all emperors were assassinated. So Romans: Age of Caesar potentially could offer a pretty innovative and dynamic simulation of the ancient Roman Empire, with thousands of players all interacting with each other. It's being developed by Firefly Studios, who made the Stronghold series, and some developers who are veterans of the Caesar series, so we'll have to see what it brings. It should be fully released sometime in 2022. At number 6, it's Victoria 3, the latest grand strategy game from Paradox, where players will be able to choose from dozens of world nations and lead one of them between 1836 and 1936, taking control of their economies and guiding their cultural development. State and society management is the focus of Victoria 3, with what the developers describe as the ultimate society simulator. Players can choose to reform their government in the face of new social innovations, or hold on to tradition against the revolutionaries. The warfare system has received a lot of attention, as it seems that unlike other games from Paradox such as Hearts of Iron or Europa Universalis, players won't be able to order individual military units around the map. Instead, Victoria 3 will focus on the overall military strategy, with players in control of supplying and allocating troops and generals to front lines, but without individually controlling those units. That makes it different even from Victoria 2. It could really freshen up the genre. We'll have to wait and see. There's no official release date yet for Victoria 3, but it looks like it will come out towards the beginning of 2022. At number 5, it's God of War Ragnarok. The latest installment of the action-adventure series starring Greek demigod Kratos, Ragnarok will take place 3 years after the events of the previous game, God of War, the 2018 one, that is, not the original, again set in ancient Scandinavia and inspired by the rich world of Norse mythology. The game is set as Fimbulwinter is ending. Fimbulwinter is the period of 3 back-to-back winters that comes right before Ragnarok, Ragnarok being a series of events leading to the end of the world. The premise is that Kratos and his now teenage son, Atreus, must venture across the 9 realms of Norse mythology in a bid to stop Ragnarok taking place. We can expect more of the visceral action, gripping storylines, big boss fights, and immersive world we know from the God of War series, as well as what the developers are calling more customizable combat, with one addition being the ability to equip different shields for different defensive options and abilities. The ancient Norse world provides some brilliant characters and inspiration. We already know that we'll see the return of Mimir, or his head at least, as well as the giant God of War Tyr, and antagonists in the shape of Freya and Thor, and, according to the developers, a whole host of new creatures from across Norse mythology. God of War Ragnarok is set to be released sometime in 2022. At number 4, it's Expeditions Rome, an RPG set in the Roman Republic around the time of Julius Caesar's rise to power. In the game, you'll create and customize your own young Roman officer, forced to flee Rome when your father is killed. You'll adventure across the Roman world, from the deserts of North Africa to the forests of Germany, along with 5 unique companions, and work your way back up the power ladder to eventually decide the fate of Rome itself. Combat is turn-based, and you can loot, craft and equip a whole number of weapons, armor and special items to gain the upper hand in battle. You'll also be able to recruit legionaries, improve your war camp, and conquer and defend regions on the game map. Expeditions Rome is shaping up to be more than twice the size of either of the two previous titles in the series, Conquistador and Viking. I enjoyed both of those games very much, and it looks to have higher production values too, with, for example, all of the dialogue being voiced this time around. The game's story will apparently take place over the course of 10 years, and based on its setting will feature the events of the late Roman Republic when Julius Caesar turned against the Roman Senate, won the ensuing civil war and was eventually assassinated by his political rivals. It's certainly got a brilliant historical setting, and the game will apparently feature a host of real-life characters and take place in Roman provinces in Greece, North Africa and Gaul. If everything comes together, this could be a really good game. Expeditions Rome should be out sometime in 2022. At number 3, it's Company of Heroes 3, the return of the popular real-time strategy series set during World War II. This installment will take place in the Mediterranean theatre of the war and feature the biggest single-player campaign of the franchise, as well as multiplayer. The core gameplay from the earlier titles remains the same, with players battling across maps, trying to capture and hold strategic resource sectors, which generate the resources needed to train and supply units for combat. Company of Heroes 3 will add a new tactical pause feature where players can pause the game and queue up a number of orders for their units before unpausing and seeing their forces carry out the orders in turn. There's also a new destruction system where whole buildings can be flattened, allowing players to alter the battlefield, and a new ability for infantry to clear garrisoned buildings. Perhaps the most exciting addition this time round is the new dynamic campaign, where players control their forces on a wider strategic level before choosing where and how to attack the enemy. This adds a whole extra layer of strategy, with players having to deal with logistics and the wider strategy of their army. It looks like each individual map will still have its own unique objectives too, so the gameplay shouldn't get too repetitive. Company of Heroes 3 will also feature new factions and units, and seeing as it's based in the Mediterranean, that gives the developers a lot of options for what to include. We know the single-player campaign features the Allied invasion of Italy, which took place in September 1943, and it will also apparently feature the preceding North African campaign as well. I'm really looking forward to getting stuck into what looks like a brilliant dynamic campaign. Company of Heroes 3 is set for release in 2022. At number 2, it's Manor Lords, the medieval strategy game that blends city building and real-time battles. You'll play a medieval lord of the manor with the game map divided into regions, each with its own mix of resources and available building upgrades. Once you get into a region, you can build up your own medieval settlement from scratch, and there looks to be quite a range of occupations and buildings, as well as control over things like taxation and trade with other regions. You can of course also muster armies, peasant militias, mercenaries, and hire and customise your own retinue. You can then go off and have a ruck with the next door neighbours. The combat looks a lot like Total War, with unit formations, the morale system, bonuses for having a height advantage or flanking, weather, equipment and fatigue all playing a role in the outcome of the battle. There's also a wider strategy level where you can interact with rival lords and seats of power such as the king of the land or the church, and historical realism is one thing the developer is really focusing on. The game is now confirmed to be set during the late 14th century in Franconia, that's in southern Germany, and one of the amazing things about this game is how it's shaping up to simulate all of the interlinked layers of a medieval feudal system of that period from the ground up. Starting with the peasants who owe their allegiance to the local manor lord, who leases them the land they work on, and in return they must be available to take up arms when the lord demands it. It looks like we'll also see the beginnings of the merchant class and the interrelationships between lords with other lords and the king and the church. The attention to detail looks fantastic, the game looks stunning, and I'm hoping Manor Lords will be released sometime in 2022. Now, before getting on to number 1, here are a few honourable mentions you might also like to keep your eye on. I Am Jesus Christ. Nope, not in real life. That's the name of the game where you can play as Jesus Christ from baptism to resurrection, featuring over 30 miracles. Apparently players will be able to receive the power of the Holy Spirit, increase its power through prayer. I mean, that sounds like a particularly boring game mechanic, and travel across the Holy Land performing miracles. I am Jesus Christ sounds like something you'd hear shouted at a psychiatric ward, looks different, and will be released in 2022. Wanderer. This is a VR game where you and your wristwatch companion, that looks suspiciously like the Pringles man, travel through time solving escape room style puzzles in order to change the course of history. I must say that some of the time periods you'll be thrown into look pretty engaging, and all in all it sounds a bit like Quantum Leap but in VR. Wanderer is coming out on the 28th of January 2022. Chernobyl Liquidators Simulator. Now there is a free demo of this game on Steam which I tried out and I wasn't expecting much, but it really sucked me in. You play as one of the liquidators, the civil and military personnel drafted in to deal with the aftermath of the 1986 Chernobyl nuclear disaster, and it's really quite immersive, especially seeing as we know the names and faces of the people involved and who perished as a result. The demo features what I presume is the opening level, and the full game is set for a 2022 release. At number 1, A Plague Tale Requiem. The sequel to 2019's A Plague Tale Innocence, the action-adventure stealth game following the exploits of Amicia de Rune and her little brother Hugo in 14th century Aquitaine, in France. There isn't a huge amount of information out so far, but we do know the game will pick up where the last one left off and feature the same protagonists. The first game was an absolute belter, set in a world torn apart by the Black Death, the 100 Years' War, and religious inquisitions. The gameplay balanced adventure, stealth, horror, and that terrible sense of foreboding extremely well. And while the story I thought went a little mad at the end, the game and the setting as a whole was brilliant. In fact, I thought the setting was so good I've made a video singing its praises, which you can check out if you're interested. From the reveal trailer, we can expect the franchise's signature flood of deadly rats, as well as a host of new and old characters. Also, perhaps the return of the Inquisition, and the same beautiful and at the same time disgusting game world. Oh, and a bloke that looks like Fred Durst. I can't wait for this game to come out. A Plague Tale Requiem is set for a 2022 release. So that wraps up my picks for historical games coming out in 2022 and beyond. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like and consider subscribing. Thanks very much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.